With record numbers of people flooding into Idaho from socialist states like California, Oregon, and Washington, many are fearing that the gem state will be the next to crumble to the woke mindset. Is this true? Could the beautiful red Idaho we love become the next California or Portland 2.0? Let's find out. Before we get started, my name is Isaac Crace. I live, work, and play here in the Boise, Idaho area and document my experiences along the way. So if you or anyone you know is looking to make the move to the Boise, Idaho area, let's connect and make that dream come true. Thank you for tuning in to this week's video because I have got a great one for you. I'm going to be covering the highly requested and highly anticipated Is Idaho or Boise, Idaho becoming the next California 2.0 or Portland 2.0? This should be a great one because through my research, there's yet to be one quite like it. And I'm probably going to upset a handful of people, although that's not much of an accomplishment these days when all it takes to oppress or offend somebody is simply tell them Merry Christmas. So before we can get into the nitty-gritty of is Boise becoming California or Oregon, we need to lay out some facts as to why California is California. The first being homeless. California has the highest homeless population in the entire nation with a total of 161,548 homeless people in the state. The next being drugs in the state. Now, although a host of drugs are still technically illegal, cities setting up so-called safe injection sites kind of doesn't support that narrative. Here's a fact that you're probably going to find interesting. In 2020, in San Francisco, there were 257 COVID-19 deaths. Do you know how many overdeaths there were in San Francisco in that same time frame? 697. And on top of that, let's look at some crime statistics. In 2021 in California, 37 out of 58 counties saw an increase in violent crime, with 10 having an increase of 20% or more. As far as property crime goes in 2021, 24 counties noted an increase, with 13 counties seeing more than 10% uptick. The city with the highest increase in property crime was San Francisco with a 16.9% increase. Now, in searching for statistics for property crime and violent crime in California, I actually found it pretty hard to gather some actual hard evidence, some hard facts and numbers, and that could be generally linked to Proposition 47 and 57, which from what I have found, decriminalizes theft under a certain dollar amount. So it looks like California and Gavin Newsom are taking the same approach to lowering their crime rate as Venezuela is taking to its hunger crisis. Just make it harder to report. And in addition to that, I do have to add in that all these numbers that I found were from FBI crime statistics and the Office of the Attorney General in California. Now that we've got that laid out, we need to look at why people are actually moving to Idaho. Aside from the aforementioned, there are a whole host of reasons that people are moving to Idaho. I've gathered a bunch of stuff from polling relocating families to firsthand discussions with California, Oregon, and Washington expats, and discussing with other industry professionals, and the answer that I've gotten are almost 100% the same, with the top answer being politics. People longing for like-minded conservatives who were tired of overbearing Democrat leaders. They wanted the freedoms that they were no longer afforded. Being able to raise a family without the government trying to weasel its way into that facet of life as well. Being able to live in a safe area where parents don't have to worry about kids being kids outside. And being able to protect them how they see fit with what they see fit. Bringing a strong work ethic and desire to help the community to a place where it's actually grateful of instead of punishing. So again and again, I'm hearing the same thing over and over again, that out-of-staters are bringing all that communist crap with them to Idaho and turning the state blue. So how do we settle that claim? Obviously, we need some numbers to actually quantify what's happening, and I found just the thing for that. The Great Exodus started around 2020 with two huge events, both COVID and an election year. So taking voting stats from the 2020 election and comparing them to the 2022 midterms will give us the definitive proof we need to finally put the argument to rest. How did it turn out? Let's see. During the 2020 presidential election, Idaho voted overwhelmingly conservative with 63.9% of the vote in comparison to 33.1% in favor of Sleepy Joe. 554,119 people voted for Donald Trump.
Come on, man!
Fast forward to 2022 midterms, Idaho had three key players gunning for governor. Brad Little, a Republican, Stephen Haidt, a Democrat, and Ammon Bundy, who was an independent but has strong conservative values. So I'm going to count his votes to the conservative total. Keep in mind the voter turnouts for the midterms are nowhere close to the turnouts for presidential elections, so vote percentages are going to be more indicative than actual vote count. Starting with the votes for Brad Little, Idaho's incumbent Republican governor, he received 60.5% of the votes, which from a perspective standpoint is less than Trump's 63.9% in 2020. Stephen Haidt, Idaho's Democrat running for governor, received 20.3% of the votes, which is considerably less than our commander in ice cream got at 33.1% in 2020.
Chocolate chip.
Oh, yeah. And the curveball to shake things up is Ammon Bundy. Like I said previously, he ran as an independent, but his voter base is conservative. So, how many votes did he get? 17.2% of the votes. He nearly surpassed the Democrat runner, bringing the total conservative vote for the 2022 midterms in Idaho to 77.7% against the 20% Democrat vote. Putting the numbers side by side from 2020 to 2022, we can see without a shadow of a doubt that Idaho has definitely gotten more conservative. Voting preferences aside and looking just towards the growth, has that brought more crime with it? Let's look at some statistics. In comparison to California's violent crime rate of 4.4 per 1,000, Idaho sits just shy of half with 2.4 per 1,000. How about property crime? California sits at 21.30 per 1,000, while Idaho is around half that at 11.05 per 1,000. So we know Idaho's crime rate is lower than California's, but is it increasing or decreasing? Well, according to FBI statistics from 2020 to 2021, Boise has seen an overall decrease in crime rate by 3.95%, a decrease in violent crime rate by 3.35%, and a decrease in property crime by 11.07% in 1 year. So far, the numbers have pointed towards a stronger conservative population and a decreased crime rate. But what about the other two big topics that I mentioned earlier about California? Drugs and homelessness. Of course, Idaho has a homeless population. Anywhere in the world has a homeless population, but it is such an insignificant amount, or I shouldn't say insignificant, but a small number for two very big reasons. The first one being the weather. Idaho doesn't really play well towards that kind of lifestyle. We have extremely cold winters where it can go below freezing. The second reason is that it's not enabled here. For instance, in Nampa, there's a city code that prohibits panhandling, and when the mayor was asked about this, is it illegal to panhandle in Nampa? No, it's not, but we don't want to encourage that kind of behavior. But how about drug problems? I'd be lying if I said Idaho doesn't have a drug problem. Idaho's current overdose death rate is 15.9 per 100,000, in comparison to California at 21.8 per 100,000. And it's increasing in Idaho like it is around the U.S. due to one drug in particular, fentanyl. In 2020 in Idaho, 21% of the overdose deaths were linked to fentanyl. In 2021, that drug could be linked to 42%. Idaho is working copious hours to decrease this and is definitely not taking California's approach of setting up so-called safe injection sites. Law enforcement investigators have shown directly that 96% of the drugs in the state originated in Mexico and were trafficked into Idaho through California. So instead of secure the border and directly save Idahoan lives, let's focus on trading convicted arms dealers for basketball players who don't even like the U.S. All in all, is Idaho becoming the next California or Portland? Right now, no, but the fight's not over. It's a silent war that likes to disguise itself in any way it can. And there is another thing I have to add to this, and I have no real way of quantifying it until the next election when we can see the voter stats of it. But I'm seeing an increasing number of the younger generation identifying with liberal values, and that is quite concerning. If you enjoyed this video, you might want to check out some of my other videos right here and right here. And until next time, I'm Isaac Crace with Top Idaho Real Estate, your third generation Idaho Realtor.